Welcome to Welfare Clinic. In a few weeks' time, Londoners will be going to vote new Mayor of London and members of the GLA. We have a representative from a party who, although not participating in this election, soon we'll find out why. You need to decide who you're going to be voting for, and before you do, judge all the candidates based on their policy. My guest for today is Hugo Pierre, who is representative from Tusk Trade Union and Socialist Coalition. Hugo, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for inviting me, Ollie.
First of all, I want to touch a little bit about the European Union referendum, which is going to take place on the 26th of June, 23rd of June. It's going to take place. Tusk, your organization, have submitted what is been called a surprise bid to lead the Leave campaign. Why has Tusk chosen to submit a bid?
Okay. Well, firstly, we are in favour of leaving the European Union because we think it ironically restricts workers' rights. I don't know if you've seen the big crisis in the steel industry. Our view is that that should be nationalised. Under EU regulations, that can't happen. So we think we need to be able to make our own decisions for the benefit of working people in this country. Now, we know that, however, what could be considered the establishment campaign to leave the EU, the likes of UKIP and all of the others, is more of a reactionary campaign, and it doesn't represent the interests of ordinary working people. So we've submitted a bid because we think that along with those trade unions that have got policy to lead, that people representing ordinary working class people should be able to put the case, the real case why workers should vote to leave the EU.
But the Tusk also have threatened to take legal action if they do not get the bid that they have submitted. Are you not thinking that there is a grassroots and UKIP Tory-led campaign? Shouldn't one of those would be much better preferred lead campaigner than Tusk?
All right, we would argue they're not a grassroots campaign. The people that are supporting the UKIP and the right-wing Tory campaign, they're all establishment figures. We know Nigel Farage pretends that he's not. He pretends he's a rebel. But they're all multi-millionaire establishment figures. They're just one wing of the establishment that has fallen out with the other wing. It's a bit like thieves falling out in some sense. So why should ordinary workers' tax money go to those people and not to us?
At the end of the day, you all are campaigning on the same issue, to leave the Europe. Wouldn't it be much more effective to work in a united way rather than doing a separate campaign?
Well, we don't think it would be effective. In fact, we think the only way that we can really answer the propaganda that's being put out by the Remain campaign, by the Tory establishment, is by answering it with workers' policies and with socialist policies, policies that are in the interest of ordinary people. For example, we know that, I mentioned the steel crisis earlier on. Well, surely that would be one of the key factors that now could be used in arguing against remaining in Europe.
What do you think the realistic chance of Tusk actually winning the bid?
Well, we'll have to go out there. We'll have to make sure that we speak to like-minded trade unions. We know, for example, the Railway Workers Union, the RMT, that's actually an integral part of Tusk. It's their policy to leave the EU, so they represent hundreds of thousands of workers. So why should an organisation like that, which is a part of Tusk, be denied the right to taxpayers' money, and instead it goes to a handful of multi-millionaires to run a campaign that's not in the interest of ordinary people? So realistic or not, we're going to make sure that we make a strong bid and a strong case for that.
Tusk is a political organisation or political party. You participate in general election, in local election. Why have you chosen not to participate in the London mayoral election?
Well, the election of Jeremy Corbyn as the leader of the Labour Party has made quite a big difference to the political situation. We welcome, by the way, the election of Jeremy Corbyn on the policies that he campaigned on. We welcomed his election as the leader of the Labour Party. Now, but we also recognise that in the background, inside the Labour Party, there are now two Labour parties. On one side, there's Jeremy Corbyn and probably the vast majority of Labour Party members. We know 60% voted in favour of him being the leader. And on the other side is unfortunately a rump, but that rump includes the vast majority of Labour MPs, the vast majority of Labour councillors, and they're all in favour of making cuts to our public services, and we're completely opposed to that. Now, we've decided in this election, as it's the GLA election, which we know it does have strategic powers, and some quite important strategic powers, but we've decided in this election to concentrate our fire on those councillors who've got their hands on the purse strings that are about to cut services for working class people in various boroughs and constituencies around the country. We're something like 320 council seats around the country, including we're also trying to defend one of the council seats that we have up in Warrington, which is actually key for us. We've got a sitting councillor, we want to defend his position. So we've decided to concentrate our fire on that, rather than the GLA elections. We do think it's important, but we think that at this stage, the council elections, where there are councillors that are making cuts and lining up against Corbyn, we want to challenge those ones that are making cuts.
So would the task be calling on Londoners to vote for Sadiq Khan, George Galloway, Green Party candidate? Who would you be supporting? Who would you be calling your voters to vote support for?
Well, obviously the different task, like you said, it's not the normal type of political party. We're an alliance. So each of the different constituents will make up their mind about who to call for support for. I'm a member of the Socialist Party, which is a part of the Tusk Alliance. And we think that we always look for any socialists that are standing. So we'll wait and see if there are real socialist candidates that are standing.
Do you think
George probably comes the closest to that, although we have to say that George renounced the ideas of socialism probably about 4 or 5 years ago, which we think is a big mistake. And also, I know
I'm sure Mr. Galloway will disagree on that.
Well, he wrote an article saying that he disagreed with the ideas of socialism now. So I suppose it's up to him to come and defend his position. But I also know, for example, that the Green councillor, Sian Berry, I know her as a Camden councillor and as a trade unionist in Camden fighting the cuts. She has positioned herself in terms of an anti-austerity candidate. So I think there are people out there that we could look to see who support. But I suppose for us in Tusk, the key is that they put forward a no-cuts policy and that they stick by that. It's a genuine no-cuts policy. It's a big part of our policy programme.
Who do you think will make the best mayor for London out of all of them?
Out of the existing ones that are there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a that's a big. Well, let's rule some people out, shall we? First, definitely not Zach Goldsmith. I saw him on a clip on YouTube, and he couldn't answer 4 simple questions about London. Sadiq Khan, in some ways. At the end of the day, we've got a single transferable vote, so we've got 2 votes for mayor. And I think we should look for any socialists that are standing as our first preference votes. But I'm still even hesitating about Sadiq Khan. He's distanced himself so much from Jeremy Corbyn. We know he's a bus driver's son. We know that he's a human rights lawyer. But as an MP, where does he stand on Jeremy Corbyn? We'd say he's distanced himself some significant way from Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, I guess and
that makes him very difficult to support.
I guess if you're already elected, whether it be as a councillor or as a member of parliament, then your votes will speak volumes as to how you defended some of those public services. But just moving forward, in terms of Tusk, what is your policy when it comes to academies and free schools? Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, well, we're completely opposed to academies and free schools. We're completely opposed to them. In reality, the programme of Free Schools and Academy is an opportunity for the government to drive a coach and horses through the education system that we have, the comprehensive education system that we have, to remove any democratic accountability of those schools.
Because the government have announced that they're going to pretty much make all the schools in the country as academy schools.
That's right. And we're completely opposed. What they're effectively doing is handing them over to either big or small businesses. The chances are, if they hand them over to small businesses or small business people, or even to small, head teachers, at one stage in the future, they will become the property of big business.
Do you not think, Hugo, that in terms of when it comes to education, a lot of parents may get better education for their children through academies than state schools?
There is no evidence whatsoever to prove that. In fact, actually, Ofsted, very recently, the head of Ofsted did a report to say that particularly the big academy chains, there was no improvement in the education in those in schools run by those academy chains compared with local authority schools. Where schools were failing, then it was more likely that if they were under the guise of the local authority, that they could then move on to succeed rather than an academy. So there's absolutely no evidence.
What would happen to a school which turned academy and wasn't performing so well? Can they reverse back to a state school?
No, it's very difficult for them to do. In fact, what normally happens is they get taken over by another academy chain, one of the academy chains. And that's happened on several occasions. It's very difficult to go back because effectively, when a school becomes academy, its property, everything is handed over to a trust. And that trust then hands it over to another trust if they're failing or if they've got inadequacies. There's no parental control of schools. There's absolutely no democratic accountability to those schools. So the heads and the trustees go off in their own direction. We've seen that happen to the detriment of kids all over the country.
One of the issues that has been dominated at the London mayoral debates is housing. Housing is the critical and crucial issue for Londoners, for the working class people. Where does Tusk stand when it comes to housing crisis, and how do you feel if you guys were to get elected position as a mayor or as a member of parliament? How do you campaign and lobby the government in terms of when it comes to social housing?
The question of housing, I mean, you're right, it is probably the most critical issue in London. We see in this borough, in Tower Hamlets, for example, it's one of the poorest boroughs in the country, yet it's probably got the 4th or 5th highest private sector rents in the country. So it's a scandal that that's allowed to continue. And we are full square in favour of the building of council housing. In Tower Hamlets, for example, where there's 20,000 people on the council waiting list, the only way that can be dealt with is by building council homes. So we think that in Tower Hamlets there should be 2,000 council homes built every single year. Especially you think there's 8,000 people that live in Tower Hamlets in homes that are unfit for habitation. So we stand full square for the building of council homes in this borough and around London to beat the housing crisis. And even if it's not building new ones, well, look at some of the developments that have been built around Tower Hamlets. You've seen it, I've seen it, we've seen brand new luxury apartment blocks go up that could house hundreds of people, hundreds of families, and they're idle, they're empty. There's lights, you can see the lights don't go on in those blocks. So we'd be in favour of the council taking those over, compulsory purchasing them, paying to those that have got a proven need for the money. So the single landlords and that, given so that we can take over those and house families that need accommodation in this borough, and young people as well.
And what would your message, or what would you say to whoever the elected mayor of London is, in terms of the market rent the government trying to introduce? Now, in a household, as we know, if you earn 40,000 or more, and that's in the household, everybody working in one household, they have to pay market rent. It will be literally impossible in some cases for people to stay in their property. What would be your message to whoever gets elected on 5th of May?
Well, we would say that the rents need to be set at around about 20% of the average income in the borough. So in Tower Hamlets, for example, the average household income is £30,000 a year, whereas market rents mean people can be paying for a one room in a flat. They can be paying £1,000 a month. So we say that the market rents are nonsense. That social affordable rents are nonsense. That rents need to come down. They need to come down to what's an affordable level, and that needs to be based on the average income in any particular borough.
And we are coming to the end. I've got a couple more questions. In terms of task policy, no cuts to anything, is that really sustainable by saying that we don't want cuts to anything when we have so much financial crisis?
Well, I'm going to give you a little example here now. In Tower Hamlets, we know that the council passed a position, the Labour Council passed a position that they're going to cut £17 million from the council budget. £4.5 million of those is to children's centres, and we know that in Tower Hamlets it's got the highest level of child poverty of any borough in the country. So that's £4.5 million that's been cut from a service that's vital for young people in this borough. A couple of days ago, the government announced that they were going to spend £9 million on a glossy leaflet to go through everyone's door for the European, in favour of the European Union. So the government, when they're under pressure, can find £9 million to put a glossy leaflet through somebody's door, but they can't find £4.5 million
But Tower Hamlets Council will
Tower Hamlets nursery.
Tower Hamlets Council will say that we've been told to find the saving by the government, and we have to find the saving, and sometime I'm sure they will say that we have to take a harsh decision, which we don't want to, but we've been left with no choice by the government.
Yeah, and we know, because we went through Tower Hamlets Council's budget, and we know they had reserves of £70 million that weren't marked down for any specific projects. They were there really as a bit of a slush fund. So even for this year, we know that Tower Hamlets Council could have balanced the budget by using those reserves. But we accept that that would have probably been for 1 or 2 years. What they need to do is then go and demand the money, put pressure on the government to release blocks of money. If they can find £9 million for a glossy leaflet, the government can find more. So we think that the Tower Hamlets Labour Council have been very cowardly in putting the pressure on ordinary people in the borough who can least afford to do it, rather than taking that fight to the government.
My last question to you, Hugo, why should British public support organisations such as Tusk and not any other establishment political party?
Well, we're not the establishment. We definitely are not the establishment. So that would be number one. And the establishment, they are all in it together, as we've seen with tax frauds, tax evasion, etc. They're all in it together, all of the establishment. So we're not part of that. So that's our first claim. But we are also radical. We do want to see change, and we do have a proven track record of fighting for change locally. Most of us are trade unionists. I'm a trade union rep myself. I have fought to defend jobs. I have fought to defend services in my particular workplace. Many of us have that background. And so I would say to people, if you're looking at people who are going to be on your side and fighting alongside you, then look at people who on a day-to-day basis fight to defend jobs, services, pay and conditions. So the establishment parties, they're all fighting amongst themselves really to carve the pie up amongst themselves, to carve up expenses for themselves. So I don't know if you noticed, for example, Eric Pickles, the guy who put Oliur Rahman out of office, allegedly for corruption, claiming there was corruption all over the place. He spent £500,000 on travelling in a taxi from meeting to meeting. You know, that's nothing compared to the mayoral limousine budget under Oliur Rahman. It's absolutely nothing whatsoever. And this guy is now the guy in charge of anti-corruption in public services. So no, we say that's the level that these people are at. We are a genuine force that we are trying to build amongst trade unionists, amongst local community campaigns, people who are fighting to defend their services. We stand with them. You know, we stand in with teachers who are fighting against academies, preparing to take strike action. We stand with doctors, junior doctors, fighting to defend the health service. We stand with all of these people. And so we would ask people to look at us, to look at our programme, and decide that we are the people really that we want to work alongside any other people who genuinely want to fight the cuts. We make that as a pledge. We would have an alliance with them that we can try and fight to defend public services in particular.
Hugo, thank you very much for coming to the show and sharing the knowledge about TASC and some of your policies. On 5th of May, Londoners will be going to elect their new mayor of London. You heard some of the policies that every candidate is debating about: housing, education, transport, those matters to ordinary Londoners. Although TASC is not participating, our advice is for you to judge who is the best candidate, who is going to be your representative in London and who will speak on your behalf. On those bases, go and cast your vote for the person that you believe. Next week, we will have a candidate from Liberal Democrats Party who is standing in the election on 5th of May. We will try to bring many candidates as possible, and we are inviting all the candidates to come and participate if they wish to do so. Until next time, do take care.